Good day everyone and welcome to another vlog for the Exodus 7 to 12 KJV project. In this vlog I have again quite a few things to share, which is really cool. So let's just get into it. So this week specifically I tried to get my render times even faster than they usually are. Sometimes it's about a minute and a half per frame or something like that, which isn't super practical for everyone. I think that's why the buzz around Eevee is so big, so that you can get only like a few seconds per frame instead of, a few minutes. But honestly and truly, it's not difficult to get low render times. The difficulty comes into getting low render times with great looking visuals. For example, what you're seeing on screen took just under a second in the viewport. It's not horrible, but it's not great either. I mean, there's no outlines, there's no proper texturing. The textures that are there are horrible in terms of their transparency. You can see the branch cutting off over there. You can see that the defocus is a problem, creating all these blurred edges. And if you turn on high quality, you get the same defocus problem that you get with the defocus node in Blender Render. And Cycles as well, it's in the compositor. Anyway, moving on. So I did try 2.79's release candidate for Cycles, to try to get faster render times with it, because Cycles would potentially be like, this huge speed boost and all that kind of stuff, and not really. While Cycles can render a smidge faster with the denoiser, kicking in and all that kind of stuff, it's only about 15 to 20 seconds per frame max, and I don't get ambient occlusion. The ambient occlusion in Cycles is like the environment lighting is in Blender Render. As soon as I turn that little distance value higher than 0, it starts to put shadows, smooth shadows on my Toon shaded objects, and I really, really don't want that. There has to be some sort of option added there to exclude the ambient occlusion. Just like in Eevee's metallic shader, there's an option to disable it. I think there's in Blender Render also an option to disable it. But anyway, removing those soft shadows is absolutely essential. So if Cycles was able to remove ambient occlusion off the Toon shading without, having to animate your brightness and your colors and all that kind of stuff, having it responsive to light, that would have been awesome. Unfortunately, it doesn't support the Hemi lights. So I can't fake environment lighting like I do in Blender Render. You can check out the tutorial in the description for Toon shading with soft shadows. I talk about all that in Blender Render. I also talk about how to do that in Cycles, but again, you don't have ambient occlusion. You just have the sun lamps, giving soft shadows, which is really unfortunate in the case with Cycles being... It's too realistic, and I know it's built for realism, I get that, but I was really hoping, because it had a Toon shader, that it would be able to actually get the exact same results, if not better results than Blender Render, and no. But anyway, moving on to other stuff, because, the speed is the speed it's going to be at the moment until Eevee gets properly off the ground and all that kind of stuff, so yeah. Moving on to this week's work. Now, what you're seeing right now is a frame from this week's shot. Let me just turn off the sound, just so it doesn't scrub. So basically, this is just Moses talking to Pharaoh again, telling him to let the people go, or he will strike the river and turn the water into blood and that sort of thing. As you can see, he's quite demonstrative about it. Interestingly enough, God told Moses to take the rod that was turned into a serpent, the dino thing. And that's the one he had to use to strike the water with. But then he also told Aaron to take the rod and to hold it over the country to turn all the water into blood. All the rest of the water. I wrote about this in the description why I say it's all the water in Egypt. So at some point, Moses had to give it to Aaron. And somewhere in between the waters of the river being turned into blood and the waters of the country being turned into blood, the magicians had to copy them and all that kind of stuff. I wrote a lot about this in the post. You can definitely check that out. But what I want to talk about specifically with this shot is something that has been apparent to me before, but it hasn't been such a problem as it has been this week specifically, where if you have like a very large scene or something and Blender struggles to update a rig, it can kind of react like a slow parent. So you'll have your animation, for example, and then suddenly on a frame, the jacket wouldn't update like it did just there, You can see it's still tied to the hand. And now I'm going to show you what happens if it's not working properly. Now this is one of the failed attempts at getting Eamon to run. So anyway, pay attention to what his hand does. I know it's very blocky, but just pay attention to what it does. You can see there's a delay. Look at that. That's what sometimes happens with constraints and stuff. It just doesn't update fast enough. And there's a very simple fix for it to force it to update faster. Sure, that arm is really, really around that head, isn't it? Look at the shoulder. Anyway, so let me show you what the fix is. So in your object settings, you can see that I've already turned these on, which is why the thing doesn't want to fail anymore, even if I turn it off. It's like it stores the animation for it. Anyway, so I use this extra object update and use the extra data update, and of course it means that everything is now fixed. What happened was he would slam down with the rod on the ground, and his hair would like be delayed just like the hand was, so his hair would like just pop forward and back. It was awesome. It was really awesome. I wish I had saved that OpenGL. Thankfully the shot's fixed. What isn't fixed though is the rendering. It's not done yet. It's only rendered at about up to there. So this week, all I have is this shot over here in terms of extra visuals. But I spent pretty much a whole day just working on sound. So I'm going to be showing you that. So what we have over here, as you can see, is a lot of sound work. What I started off with was just getting the water sound a lot lower, that rapids kind of sound. So this is what that sounds like.
See, I have made thee a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet. Thou shalt speak all that I command thee, and Aaron thy brother shall speak unto Pharaoh.
Isn't that cool? It's much more stable. You'll also notice that I delayed the fade in also quite significantly. It's just to put a little space between the opening and the first time you actually hear something. I did that because I also added audio to the first part. So this is what that sounds like. Creepy. In the right way. It's supposed to give this what's about to go down kind of sense to it, So anyway, getting back to more stuff for the week. I just want to see what else there is. I also increased the fading time for Pharaoh's Show a Miracle for You shot, just so it's not so sudden. It kind of almost looks like an error. Like some of the footage got lost and I rendered it out and just uploaded it in oops. So I wanted it to be a little bit more purposeful, show that it's purposeful. Okay. Also bettered the timing for this shot over here where he says, where the sound kind of builds up and then stops and the picture comes on. So this is what that looks like.
Then thou shalt say unto Aaron, take thy rod and cast it before Pharaoh.
Love it. Just absolutely awesome. And it shall become a serpent. And then, of course, there had to be throw sounds. Now, I'm not entirely happy with the throw sounds so far, but it's definitely better than having nothing at the moment. So just remember that pretty much nothing in terms of the audio is final just yet. There's some stuff, like the heartbeat and all that kind of stuff earlier. that stuff is pretty final, but I'm talking about the general sound effects. Nothing about the general sound effects is final yet. I just love that. That's so cool. I think having the second whoosh is a little bit much if you have the first one, but it's something I have to play with and pray about and all that kind of stuff. So we'll get to that later. So there's the whistle, and of course there's the magicians coming on. What I would like to do is have a big boom kind of sound, not like a cannon or something, just a nice solid thud, the kind of stuff that you hear in movie trailers, that nice strong single beat. So I tried slowing down something to get it like that, knock on the door, but it didn't quite get that boom sound. I mean, you'll hear it now. It's too soft, and when you try to up the volume, it just clips. So it's something I still have to go work with. Also, the stick tap moments were upped in terms of brightness, so you can actually see more. So I actually did get to do a little bit more visual work. And thankfully, it's not so bright that it doesn't really fit the rest of the visual. I mean, look at that. It's a little obvious, but not to the point where it's ridiculous. So anyway, and then there's the throw, and I used a similar dropping sound for this stick. I think I need to record different sticks. The one I used is missing anyway, so I do have a different one that I can record as well and see which one works best where. So this is what this one sounds like. Generally, these types of sound effects would be extremely low as opposed to the music that would play over it, that sort of thing, because it's more dramatic. It's not really about realism. So this thing might be removed entirely at the end. Like I said, it's not final. Same thing over here. It's just a single tap. Nothing for the transform yet, except for the eating. Same whooshing sound that came with Aaron's throw of the rod. Love that. That's so funny. And of course, I did a heartbeat for Pharaoh, over here, but it doesn't really fit. Maybe it's too loud. Maybe it needs music. I don't know. I'll play it for you guys. I'm not crazy about it. So if you guys don't like it, don't be afraid. I don't like it either. It's not crazy about it. Anyway, moving on. It's fine. And of course, we have then God speaking again to Moses specifically, and the water stream coming in. And that again, as I told you guys earlier, turned down a lot. So,
and thou shalt stand by the river's brink against ye come. And the rod which was turned into a serpent shalt thou take in thine hand, and thou shalt say unto him.
And of course then the shot for this week has to go in here, but it has to finish rendering. So what I can do is I can show you guys what it looks like so far. It still needs a little bit of a depth of field just to soften the background, just a smidge, so your focus doesn't go towards the wall and the ground behind him. And of course Aaron is here, but he's not visible in any of the two shots right now because the focus is on what Moses is saying. Okay, now obviously it's not synced, so I'm not going to even mess with that. I'm just going to show you what it looks like. As you can see, he's quite feisty about the whole thing. Which is necessary. I mean, he doesn't emote very well. I mean, he says specifically that he's not eloquent, he's not good with words, he's of slow tongue and all that kind of stuff. So this is pretty much the shot. I would place Aaron behind him somewhere out of the frame. I also, you don't see it in here, but I put his rod in his other hand because God specifically instructed him to use the one that was used to turn into a lizard, dinosaur, serpent thingy, which I spoke about earlier. So, that is it for this week in terms of Exodus. But I also did get to work on something else this week as well, which I want to show you guys. Metal shaders. Oh yeah. Now, as you can see, there are quite a few ways to do it. The thing with metal and anime is that metal in anime doesn't depend on the material first. It depends on the knowledge that whatever you're looking at is metal. Whether it's a plane, whether it's a car, whether it's a robot, whether it's some weird countertop type thing, I don't know, it doesn't matter. The point is that you know it's metal first before you see it's metal. If you want to see what I mean, go look at Transformers, Iron Man, some of the other mech anime. You can check out some of the Gundam Seed stuff. You know, you can go look at metals in anime, and you will be amazed at how little effort is sometimes put into making something metallic look metallic. Sometimes it's just a flat diffuse shader, not even any specular stuff added to it. I'm talking about it's like a cloth. It's got the same look as a cloth. So getting the material right isn't the main focus. Getting the understanding across is the focus, that it is metal. On top of that, you get the material then. So, for example, this is a more realistic type metal, which is a matcap based idea that actually has diffuse and specularity. But it doesn't really move. It just moves as the material's normals move. That's why I say it's very matcap. But it definitely works. You can see on the clothes, I just added a specular highlight to make it more metallic looking. And for this one, I added various metallic elements, such as extreme brightness next to extreme darkness, which is something that's very obvious in metals, especially if you look at these lines over here across the head. And of course, then we have a more robot-esque type material that reflects as angles change. This one would depend on having beveled edges and soft shading, smooth shading actually, to actually have something to reflect on. Otherwise, it will be flat as a pancake since it is a reflective material, just like the matcap is and just like this shader is over here. Now, this fourth one over here is a bit of a different case. It's a lot more basic, similar to the material over here with the clothes and the specular highlight, but it does have a little bit of an extra ingredient to it that adds a little bit more contrast, to say that it's more polished in a way. The only problem is that this black area over here is not responsive to light. In other words, if the light is coming from this side, there will still be black over there. So if you have your light coming from a specific angle, you're going to have to move the texture. It's a cloud texture. You're going to have to move the cloud texture to fit the right spot in relation to the light source. And the same with hair. The hair is the same as the face over here. So it does respond to light, this material, but it doesn't respond to light like this one does or like this one does over here. It still has an element of the light may be over there, but on the material it looks like it's coming from over there. It's something I'm still kind of toying around with. I would love to do a tutorial on these shaders, but can't make any promises. I can't say when, that sort of thing. So it's just something cool I got to share with you guys this week. So that's it for this week's work. Have a great one and God bless you.